149. Let's get to the third Ant-Man film, the last in the trilogy, which is Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which came out in 2023. And we did review this originally when it came out on Disney Plus, but I figured since I'm doing the whole trilogy, let's get it all together and revisit it. It is once again directed by Peyton Reed, who did the first two as well. Stars basically the same cast, but along with Jonathan Majors, Catherine Newton's in there, Bill Murray, Katie M. O'Brien, who was just in Love Lies Bleeding, which we also reviewed on the show. And the synopsis is Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne are dragged into the quantum realm, along with Hope's parents and Scott's daughter Cassie. Together, they must find a way to escape. But what secret is Hope's mother hiding? And who is the mysterious Kang? So I did not see this one in theaters. Again, we reviewed this originally when it was on Disney Plus, and that was the first time seeing it, and this was just a revisit. I think that it's a tough one because I want to like it more than I do. I don't think it's as bad as some people say. I know on Letterboxd at least it's been pretty trashed. I don't think it's horrible, but as I said with the first two films, I think this is by far the weakest of the three, and probably the biggest mistake of all is with the first two films, what makes those work for me at least is they're set in for the most part, a reality. And in this, you're in the quantum realm for 95% of the movie. And so therefore, everything around you is fake. The whole world, you have no real understanding of, and there's no real weight to it. There's not real stakes for the most part. And there's not a real sense of grounding where you could see these things happening if this were a real suit. But the quantum realm is so far out there that's it's hard to really relate to. And since you don't really have a knowledge of the people there, their connections, like how they got there, how they came to be, where things are geographically, it's really very hard to grasp. And at the same time, I don't mind that the world is totally sci-fi, a lot of CG. I'm not inherently against that at all. But I think that you do lose some of the charm, you lose some of the creativity, because there's not really a lot of Ant-Man, Wasp skills or cool technologies. It's all mostly just them walking around and fighting this main guy, but really not much else going on with the character and what we note and what we love about him, at least for me. And the CG itself, I think for the most part, it looks pretty good, but at the same time, there are points, and I think it's mostly a lighting issue, is there are times where it looks they are totally on a green screen. Like they're just actors in a costume and everything around them is totally CGI'd. That's it. And so I think that I don't know exactly what caused that. Like, again, it's lighting, cinematography, the direction, I don't know, but that was an issue occasionally for me. I usually can just have that suspension of disbelief. All right, I know this is fake, but there were points where that was not done perfectly, where you kind of need to. Like, if you're going to set the entire world where almost nothing around you is practical, you need to be on top of that 110%. Otherwise, you're going to distance the audience immediately. So that's a small issue, but I don't know if it's a combination of those other factors that I just said, but this movie, it's not, I don't think, any longer than the first two. It feels really long. It feels like it's 2.5 plus hours. And the first two, I don't really have that issue that much. As I said, they're a little long occasionally, but this one felt like it really dragged. And I think Peyton Reed, I give him props for doing really well, especially on the first one, but I don't think he really has the chops to pull off this kind of world in this context and have it feel grounded and emotionally resonating. I don't think he has that knack, because the first two aren't really that emotional and they don't really have a huge world building. It's very up close and personal, kind of small scale stuff. And this is huge. This is like Avatar kind of thing. And I don't think he has the knack for doing and pulling this sort of film off. So I get that they want to hire the guy who did the first two because both were successes. Fair enough. But I still think creatively it was a mistake. And then also, and I know that Jonathan Majors has already been, canceled, crushed at this point because of all the lawsuits that have been put against him. But even before all that, I was not really a huge fan of his. I hadn't seen him in a lot of stuff, but he just didn't do much for me, but especially not now. But I think even if I hadn't known any of the stuff that was going on with him legally, I think he is terrible in this. Like, I know some people really like him. I think he's terrible. I thought he was so dull. I mean, the motivation for the character, I think it's all right. Like, it's sort of different. There's kind of a viciousness to him that I like. But I thought performance wise, so sleep inducing. Like, he is trying to pull off this very calm, composed, quiet villain who's, even though he's very soft spoken, he's super terrifying and unsettling and scary. I get what he was going for. It did not work for me at all. I thought when he would just start speaking, like, and then this, I'm going to do that, like, it just, I was falling asleep as I was watching it. And so I think he was very miscast. I would love to hear people's thoughts. If I'm in the minority, I might be sorry, but I really, really did not like his performance in this. And really, whenever he came on screen, I was checking out, because it's like Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, and Michelle Pfeiffer are to me, are the core, or why these movies keep me interested. That charisma and that overall character group. But Michael Douglas, okay, and other people who pop up in this, Bill Murray, he's fine. I really do like Katie O'Brien. She's awesome. I hope to see her in a lot more, because especially after Love Lies Bleeding, I think she is a great talent. So it was nice to see her in this. She has a great physicality. And I think, going back to the world building real quick, I think there are a lot of cool elements that are injected in terms of character designs, little bits of the world, but there's almost so much that none of it really resonates, and it's not memorable because they go through so much so quickly that I'm not taking the time or allowing to have the time to think about, oh, what's that? Like, I wonder where that came from, or what does this mean? Or it's more just, oh, that looks interesting. That's cool. That's funny. That's really about it. Whereas with a movie like this, you could, with the right structure, the right orchestration, you could have that really feel more lived in, more connecting, But in this, it's really just visual teases. I think, hey, here, all these cool elements. Now we're really creative. We're really out there in weird fantasy. Like, and it's not terrible. It's not a letdown, but I do feel like as the movie went on and more of that was injected in, it became like mind numbing. So, all that stuff at the same time, I still liked being with those characters, and I still liked being in such a weird, distant realm that it was just different. It was just interesting because of that. And I like how weird and one off it is, being in its own little place and corner of the MCU. I'm cool with that. Not a perfect movie, but I still appreciate that. And it's one that I can always, if I need an escape, I can go back to. And I don't think it's not as bad as people are making it out to be. I don't think. I get if you hate it, but to me, maybe I just have a soft spot for this kind of movie. Other than that, the action is okay. I think it's all fairly normal, but it is for sure inferior to the first two action wise, and what they are able to do with Wasp and Ant-Man together and then by themselves. I do think the daughter is pretty good, and I like that relationship with her and Paul Rudd. I think that works, and just those little triangles of relationships and trouble. I think all that is good. Not amazing, but passable. Couple quick things that I did like: the scene where there's the multiple Ant-Mans, like the constantly multiplying. I thought that was pretty funny. And then the idea of Paul Rudd or Scott Lang writing a book about everything, I thought that was pretty clever. And so, I mean, there's little bits of humor. There's just not enough to where, really, for the most part, this character should be in a comedic film. And there is comedy, but it's mostly fairly flat, and it's a little too mundane and diluted to really, it wasn't that funny of a movie. Whereas I found the first two pretty much were consistently. And I think that, especially with Paul Rudd at the lead, you need to have this movie be comedic. Because Ant-Man, it's ridiculous. All right, just the name is ridiculous. So having it be more serious, as much as I love dark, emotional, serious superhero films, it's not, Guardians 3 where you can really dip into the trauma of characters. It's just, that's not what this series is, Maybe that's what they're going for, or they were just trying to be something so crazy different that They just reached a little too far than they should have, but hey, I applaud them for trying. And that I can respect. It could have been a lot better. And in hindsight, I wish they had just done a more grounded version in the real world as opposed to exploring the quantum realm, which don't really care about. Sorry. It's diverting enough. It's got cool colors, but still a little bit of a letdown, and one of the lesser films that the MCU has done since Endgame. I think Doctor Strange 2 is probably my favorite, along with Guardians 3. And I'll definitely review all of those at some point, so don't worry. So check it out. If you like Ant-Man, I think you could do worse. If you like Marvel, you could do worse. Just, yeah, it's okay. So that is a light 3 out of 5.